All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are here to announce that this morning the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, in coordination with local law enforcement, carried out raids at 10 locations in Kansas selling marijuana itself or selling illegal THC products. The rule of law is at the very bedrock of our entire legal system. Indeed, it's the bedrock of our government. If we have a law, the law is expected to be enforced. We are all obliged to follow the law, and there really are no exceptions. But for some time in recent years, enforcement of our laws against marijuana and THC in Kansas have been intermittently, or in some jurisdictions not enforced at all. And so this is an announcement that period of lax enforcement is ending, and the KBI has taken the lead in identifying places that have become particularly brazen in their selling of marijuana products. Now, there are some things that many people are certainly familiar with and have probably seen in Kansas stores, even though they are illegal. The perfect example would be THC vapes. THC vapes are expressly prohibited in Kansas law. It is a crime to sell THC vapes, but they have started to appear. Indeed, they have started to appear at locations all over the state. But in addition to the THC vapes, these stores are also selling pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes. This is absolutely, undeniably illegal in Kansas, and everybody knows that's illegal in Kansas, but the brazenness of these sales has become really outrageous when you consider they go for something that, like a THC vape, that may be illegal in many jurisdictions outside of Kansas, to marijuana cigarettes. In addition to marijuana itself, I just want to reiterate and inform those of you who aren't sure exactly what the specifics are in Kansas law. THC vapes are prohibited. THC teas, TEA, is expressly, those teas are prohibited in Kansas law. And hemp-based products intended for human consumption that contain more than a trace amount of THC. And that trace amount is 0.3% dry weight, on a dry weight basis. So selling marijuana remains illegal in Kansas. And when something is illegal, it is expected that law enforcement will enforce the law. For the past 3 legislative sessions, there have been bills to legalize marijuana either entirely or partially for medical purposes, but all of those bills have failed. And so until there is a change in the law in Kansas remains what it is, and it must be enforced and enforced equally. In 2018, there was the legalization of TH-free CBD oil, and it is, of course, legal to sell CBD oils and other CBD products. Kansas law makes that clear, but THC, which is the component of marijuana that creates the hallucinogenic effect or the high, remains illegal in Kansas, and as I've stated, across the board illegal when it's in the form of a vape or a tea, and then any other human product intended for human ingestion, it's illegal unless the THC is only a trace amount defined as 0.3% or less. So I will step aside now and allow our KBI director to give you more details about what transpired this morning.
Thanks, Chris.
Tony?
Good afternoon, everyone. Earlier today, the KBI began executing search warrants at 10 locations across the state. All of the locations that we identified were places where undercover agents have entered in the past and made purchases of marijuana, both in leaf form and in pre-rolled cigarettes. All of the jurisdictions we've identified are areas where prosecutors have agreed that they will accept marijuana cases from us and will file the relevant and appropriate criminal charges. We're taking this action because we are seeing instances across the state where young people, Kansas kids, are suffering bad effects from too much THC. I was at one of these locations earlier today. The violations of the Kansas Controlled Substance Act are brazen. These places are selling pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes. They're selling marijuana bud, they're selling marijuana flower in canisters and cigarette by cigarette. The places that we've identified today are nothing but weed dealers in strip malls. And we cannot continue to not enforce our controlled substance laws when we have these substances causing bad effects on Kansas kids. A teenager buying marijuana in Kansas today in these shops would face less resistance than if they were trying to buy cigarettes. And that has to come to an end. And that's what we did today. So 10 search warrants are taking place right now in locations all across the state. If you want specifics, Melissa can get you those. We plan more the rest of the day today and tomorrow. Friday we've devoted to paperwork and processing evidence. Reports will be sent to prosecutors in each of these jurisdictions. The substances that have been seized and are being seized will be sent to the lab, both our lab, to the extent the KBI lab is capable of processing these items, and to private labs in situations where the KBI isn't prepared to or capable of processing. And then all of those reports will be sent to prosecutors, and prosecutors will make filing decisions based on what we present to them. With that, I think we're ready to take questions.
So what exactly has led to the lax enforcement of these laws?
You know, I think a couple of things. One is that well, it started with the Farm Bill, I believe, of 2018, where the legalization of some hemp-based products, like CBD oils and things like that, may have led some people who sell those things to try to push the envelope and push the line and move into things that have THC. And seeing that there was no resistance, they continued to sell the THC, and then they said, okay, well, how about marijuana cigarettes? And again, now, I shouldn't say that there's been no enforcement. There has been intermittent enforcement, but the brazenness with which they are selling these products has gotten to a level that it absolutely has to stop. And as Director Mativi stated, you do have instances now where teenagers, minors, are showing up in the emergency room with conditions obviously caused by THC consumption.
Well, I guess I was just trying to get to more from a law enforcement perspective. Is it a matter of it not being pushed as much among law enforcement to go enforce it, or is it sort of a staffing issue? I'm just trying to get a sense of why these shops have been able to.
But I think that's ultimately a question for local law enforcement. I think in the case of some, they might have heard that statutes have been allowing some substances but not others. There might have been some confusion. I don't know, Tony, do you have any speculation?
Sure. Since the Farm Bill passed, there's been an acceptance, a growing acceptance of some of these products, whether they're CBD or THC. Over time, these shops, I think, have pushed the envelope and pushed the envelope and pushed the envelope to now we've reached the point where instead of CBD products or THC products, they're selling actual marijuana. That's the point at which we have to draw the line. We have to draw the line when they are specifically and expressly violating the statute and it's resulting in harmful effects on Kansas kids. That's how we got where we are today.
We've seen prosecutors though say we're not going to prosecute these crimes because it's not the most serious thing that we have to worry about here. Why is this a priority for the KBI?
It's a priority because of the sort of the constant decay or the continuous decay that we've seen that's led us to a place where now kids are going to the hospital. It may not be the most pressing issue on a global basis, but when it's your kid who goes to the hospital, that's a very pressing issue. In my view, when we have Kansas kids that are suffering ill effects from overdosing on high concentration amounts of these substances, and there's a law that specifically prohibits it, it's time to enforce it.
When you say actual marijuana, do you mean as defined in the Farm Bill, Delta 9 THC over 3% net weight?
In the coming days, As these charges get filed, you're going to get a glimpse of the things that we're actually seizing on these operations, and you're going to see actual marijuana flower, you're going to see actual marijuana leaf, you're going to see actual marijuana bud, you're going to see pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes. All of these are backed up by controlled purchases that our undercovers have made. For example, by walking into these shops and saying, can I purchase a marijuana cigarette? So those are the kinds of activities that led to the execution of the search warrants today.
And including responses from the person behind the counter saying, yes, here are our marijuana cigarettes right here. So it's not as if there's any lack of information or misunderstanding about what's being sold.
But with how it's defined in the Farm Bill, I think there's been a loophole that's been exploited where they say we have Delta 8 THC and Delta 10 THC and THCA, so it's technically not illegal. There's no law in Kansas, there's an AG opinion about the use of those alternate THC products. Is there any potential liability here for you guys?
No, I don't think so, because there is one area of the law where there is, where it's not, it might not be super clear to an attorney who and that's on this, these trace amounts of hemp-based products where they have a trace amount of THC or a trace amount of Delta 8, and that trace amount is 0.3%, and how do you determine that? That's one category. But Kansas law is crystal clear. It says you may not sell THC-infused vapes, and you may not sell THC-infused teas. And of course, you may not sell marijuana itself. So while there may be a little bit of confusion, does this product really have less than 0.3% THC or not? In that category, in the three categories I just mentioned, the vapes, the teas, and the marijuana itself, there's no confusion. There's no possibility anyone could read the law and come to a conclusion other than this is illegal per se.
Your question is a valid one, right? And there is a loophole, and that's been exploited by some people. The operation today isn't dealing in loopholes. It's dealing with crystal clear violations of the Kansas Controlled Substance Act. That's the point where these vendors, these retailers have crossed the line. That's the point where we have to step in and enforce.
There's no giving them a heads up, hey, we're going to give you a grace period, get rid of the product, and then the other question is, what is the penalty for should they go forward and be convicted of?
Well, the statute itself is the heads up, right? And in this area, I don't think anyone can seriously claim that they were selling a CBD oil and they decided, oh, I guess it's okay for me to move into marijuana cigarettes or a jar of marijuana leaves and marijuana buds. So I think that anyone claiming that they were unaware, any vendor claiming that he was unaware, is going to be pretty clearly disingenuous when you see the items that were seized. Again, these are not items that might be in some gray area where the vendor would think, oh, maybe that's okay if I sell it. The brazenness of what's going on is what is undeniable.
And then the penalty is what?
Oh.
Move on.
I don't have the, well, it's not the way the Kansas sentencing works is that there is a grid in the sentencing factors, but it is a felony in Kansas to sell these controlled substances.
Were any of the locations that were targeted in Topeka and Shawnee County, and do you have the local DA's agreement to prosecute those cases?
Yes, and Tony can give you the specific location.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, in process right now are 10 locations around the state. Melissa can get the details for you afterwards if you'd like those. We do have one location in Topeka. We are only undertaking this enforcement action in jurisdictions where prosecutors have agreed to take these cases and to prosecute when appropriate.
Do any of those locations include private homes, or are they all businesses?
All businesses.
Are they all CBD stores, or are there some gas stations, liquor stores?
All of the above. We targeted the location based on the brazenness of the criminal activity, not on what it's called, whether it's called a CBD shop, a head shop, liquor store. We're targeting the activity, not the nature of the distributor.
But they're all retail locations. I don't think any gas stations were in the group.
I don't remember a gas station yet.
You said you're carrying out some more tomorrow and Thursday. So altogether, how many locations will be hit?
I'm not willing to talk to you about what's going to happen or what may happen in the future. I can tell you that there are 10 warrants in process right now with more to follow.
Is there consideration for prosecuting at the state level in areas where the local DA doesn't want to bring charges?
Well, the way Kansas law works is the local DA has control of whether or not to bring charges, and the local DA can ask the Attorney General's office to come in and assist in prosecuting, which happens all the time with, say, homicides or child-involved sex crimes. No, in these jurisdictions, the local county attorney or the district attorney, depending on what we're talking about, has the decision entirely.
How many have told you that, no, we're not going to prosecute, would you say, these DAs?
Tony's had those conversations.
Eric, that's really not how the discussion went down. The discussion was us identifying brazen locations, going to the prosecutor, seeing if they were willing to participate, and if they said they were, then we move forward. I don't have a tally for you of whether or how many folks said, no, we're not willing to do that.
Can you give us an idea of how long this investigation has been in the works, or the kind of work that it took the KBI agents to identify these locations and get enough evidence to get the search warrants?
So I can tell you that our actual, the law enforcement related operations leading up to today have been in place for weeks. There have been controlled purchases in each of these locations in the past. In most situations, I believe we've had multiple controlled purchases in each location. Now, what led to that part of the enforcement, I can't tell you if it's a matter where the locals called us and said, hey, this is a problem area. If it's an area where we receive reports of somebody ending up in the ER as a result of products sold, whether it's just generally known in the community that there's this type of activity going on. All of that has taken place. Each of those situations has led us to where we are today. The law enforcement part of this has been underway for several weeks now.
I remember it was before I moved here, but there was a raid on a Topeka CBD shop about 2-3 years ago. I seem to recall that conviction, there not being a conviction. They seized the stuff and didn't give it back. There was no conviction. Is there a history of these convictions for these alternative THC products holding?
Do you know which one he's talking about?
I recall hearing something about that, but it's not anything that we paid attention to or that played a role in or played a part in the decision-making process for this operation.
Okay. Are there any particular trouble spots in the state for this type of activity?
I don't know that I can identify for you like a hot spot or anything like that. I think we can tell you that the operations that are taking place now are really a cross-section of our state, as will be the ones that happen moving forward.
Is this just focused on retail? Is there any look at people growing hemp use for this or people manufacturing these products?
Not a part of this operation.
I mean, that said, each one of these investigations is separate. So you might have, not only the owner of the shop perhaps being the culpable individual who is, without question, has mens rea of a sale. You might, depending on the circumstances, you might have potentially the individual who sold it to the shop owner or delivered it to the shop owner. So, and whether that individual is involved in production, I don't know. So I don't want to say categorically there won't be any prosecution of somebody who's involved in the production of the item.
We don't know where this is going to lead, right? We have to have an opportunity to review the evidence, to see what the agents have seized, to figure out where it's coming from, who's responsible for it. This is the beginning. It's not the end. We need to see what we take in the next couple of days.
So at this stage, each location is its own separate investigation. There's nothing connecting them other than it's an enforcement action broadly across the state.
Well, the KBI is the common factor, right? Because KBI will be doing the testing and will be presenting the reports to the various DAs and county attorneys. Anything else you want to add there?
No, you're correct. Each of them is a sort of a standalone investigation. The common thread is this is a statewide enforcement action.
I guess in terms of sort of back to local law enforcement, what's been the messaging from you to local law enforcement officials about ensuring that things like this aren't happening under their watch?
We try very hard to have everything that we do be a collaborative effort with local law enforcement. We are aware that there have been some isolated instances of individual communities ahead of us in this kind of an operation. There's 2 communities down in the Wichita area, for example, that have already engaged in their own marijuana enforcement operations on a local level. Beyond that, I'll just leave it very general and say we try very hard to coordinate with local law enforcement in these kinds of investigations and really in everything that we do.
Are these products riskier than, I guess, traditional marijuana because it's part of this unregulated market? I guess different from what we see across the state border to the east?
Well, I mean, it's hard to answer in terms of which one is the most risky, right? I mean, marijuana itself has gotten more potent over the past few decades. So we really can't say at this point until the tests are done at the KBI lab, you know, how much THC is there in this THC vape? Is the level here or is it here? And what does that compare? How does that compare with the pre-rolled marijuana cigarette? So I'd hesitate to say, you know, this product right here is the most risky because there are multiple products being sold at these retail locations.
Generally speaking, part of the problem that we're dealing with when it comes to THC and marijuana is that there has been a continuous rise in the concentration or the level of purity, the level of THC that's present in these products. This isn't the 6 or 7% THC ditchweed that a lot of people in this state are familiar with. We're talking about products that contain 75, 85, 95% pure THC. And some of the adverse health implications or ramifications that we're seeing from this comes from use of THC at that concentrated a level. We don't know what the effects of that are yet, and we certainly don't know what the effects of that are on a still developing adolescent brain. So that's part of the problem. Part of the reason we're taking enforcement action here is the very risky nature of the product and the effect that it's having on our young people.
Would it be safer if all of this were legal but heavily regulated to limit that concentration?
Well, that's one of the arguments that's made in the legislature, right? My own 2 cents on that subject is if you look at what has happened in neighboring states where they've broadly legalized almost all of this, is that you still have a black market where the unregulated material is easier to obtain because there's so much legal trade in the regulated materials. And Oklahoma law enforcement in particular has come to Kansas, and they have testified in the Kansas legislature saying, don't do what Oklahoma did. Here are all of the health consequences and law enforcement consequences we've seen. So I would offer those 2 points. Tony, you want to add any more?
I think the answer to your question is no, and I think the surrounding states and the impact that legalization has had on those states and in those individual communities bears out that the answer to that question is no.
Do you have a sense of where this THC is coming from? Is it being grown, manufactured here? Is it being imported through cartels or some other means?
I think we'll have that information when the criminal complaints are laid out. And my guess is that it's probably not just grown in Kansas, and that it's probably coming from all over the nation and probably from outside of the country too.
Has there been any direct conversation with families and teenagers that suggests, that kind of points to the danger that is kind of being caused by the selling of these products?
Well, there have been law enforcement reports and reports from concerned families in some of these communities that Director Mativi mentioned. I have not had a discussion with a family about one of their children having the adverse health effects, but I know that law enforcement officers in these communities have. Anything else you want to add on that?
The only thing I'm going to add is that today is a good day for Kansas families. Today is a good day for Kansas kids. Getting these substances off of counters and not available to Kansas teenagers is a good day for our state.
Well, and if nothing else, maybe it will spur conversations in some families. I can imagine that there might be some teenagers who know that marijuana is illegal, but they see these acronyms, CBD and THC, and is everything else okay if it has 3 letters? No. CBD is legal. CBD products and oils and whatnot are legal, provided they don't also have THC in them above 0.3%. But THC is not. And these THC-derived products, especially the ones that are clearly and expressly stated in Kansas law, vapes and teas, are not legal in Kansas. And in addition, there are a bunch of other things that are not legal as well that are THC products.
At least at this stage, is the focus of the prosecution on the sellers of the illegal products, not the purchasers?
Oh, that's correct, yeah.
sellers.
The focus is exclusively on the sellers and suppliers, not on the consumers.
Is that the business or the clerk behind the counter who made the transaction?
Well, it would be the business. The objective is not to, not to arrest some clerk who didn't know, didn't plan, doesn't control all of the items that the store sells. It's the, and indeed, that might even be difficult if there's no mens rea, no criminal intent by that clerk. So it's more likely going to be focused on either the owners of the stores, the supplier who brings these items in, the person who knows what's being sold.
Are these business owners, other than selling allegedly illegal products, are they otherwise operating legal businesses, like registered with the Secretary of State and whatnot?
Have we, I would assume so, but I don't know if that's occurred in everyone.
You're asking us to generalize about a topic that we're not ready to generalize about. We got to see what happens in the next couple of days as the results come in from these warrants.
And, you'll soon see the list of the locations, and it would be easy for anybody to just get online and see if that location has a license, or has a business registration with the state through the Secretary of State's office. I would be surprised if any of them did not. It's so easy to register a business in Kansas. I mean, any one of us in this room could do it in 5 minutes on a computer.
But on the flip side of that coin is, just because you've registered your business in Kansas doesn't mean it's legal for you to sell weed out of that business, and that's what we're seeing.
Have they been paying taxes on the weed that they've been selling?
Again, I can understand why you want to go there. That's not the focus, and we're not ready to go there yet.
But I would add, if the county attorney prosecuting that case learns that not only have they been selling illicit marijuana and illicit THC vapes, they also haven't been paying taxes on some of these items, I would be surprised if the county attorney didn't also charge those violations.
Absolutely.
Are there any county attorneys that hasn't been cooperating with your investigation? And if so, would you guys be able to disclose which counties are?
Tony's team's been in communication with them. I don't know, do you want to answer that?
No. I can't tell you that that's happened. I mean, similar to Eric's question earlier, we haven't kept track of jurisdictions, even if there are any, where the prosecutor has said no. What we're keeping track of is the jurisdictions where the prosecutor said yes. There is a significant number of those, and that's part of the reason that we're moving forward with this, is because we have so many county attorneys and district attorneys that have said, yes, we've had enough. We have to enforce. We welcome the case.
I guess from either one of your offices, will there be any sort of push to, from a state perspective, to eliminate some of the loopholes that sort of led to the lax enforcement in the first place?
Ultimately that's up to the legislative leadership if they want to take this up. This is a topic that comes up every year, and that regardless of what legislative leadership wants to do, I'm sure that there will again be bills, legalizing entirely marijuana products, partially legalizing marijuana products. It's inevitable that the legislature will be presented with various bills. There are plenty of violations in the crystal clear areas like THC vapes and THC teas to keep Kansas law enforcement very busy for a very long time at this stage, unless the vendors realize, hey, the law is the law in Kansas and the law will be enforced. So it's up to the legislature if they want to go into some of the other products, and really the only gray area is what is 0.3% dry weight in an infused drink that is not a tea, or in a cooked product, or in a jelly bean that purports to be less than 0.3%. That's the only area where I think it's not obvious to anyone who's read the statute and looked at the product that this product is illegal.
Would the rescheduling of marijuana impact this or future actions against?
It might influence the legislature, but it doesn't change Kansas law.
All right, thanks.
I would add, though, there are a couple of places where Kansas law makes reference to federal law, but in terms of marijuana being illegal in Kansas, that would remain in place regardless of the rescheduling.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.